Welcome to Taskforce Geek. My name is Dirk Hooper, and I'm joined today by Shawn.
Hey.
And Scott.
Howdy.
And our special guest, Steve Campbell.
Hello.
How you doing, Steve?
Good. How you guys?
I think I'm doing pretty good. We got a different background today. It is non-epilepsy inducing, hopefully.
Unless you have a really slow form of epilepsy.
Right. If any movement at all causes that, then my deepest apologies.
Probably shouldn't be watching this.
That's right. All of the stories or questions that we're talking about tonight were shared on the Taskforce Geek Quora space. That's below. Join us there and get a preview of what we could be talking about. You can also, I had this episode posted on there so you could ask some questions on there as well. Taskforce Geek on Quora now has over 500,000 followers, and you can find that at the link below. If you want to be a guest on Taskforce Geek, I'll tell you how to do that at the end. We are broadcasting live on my Facebook account. There it is. And on our ridiculous YouTube account, there it is. One more time, I'm going to plead with you. We're about 50 people away from changing that to youtube.com/channel/Taskforce Geek. Go over there, even if you don't use YouTube, and subscribe to that thing. We're only 50 people away. Come on, help us out. All right.
I'm going to do that now.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. Do it during the show. That's a perfect time. If we could only have everyone on the show subscribe to this thing, we would really be there. No doubt about it. All right. So our first topic tonight is Michael Keaton. This is the craziest story I've heard in a while. Michael Keaton is in talks to play Bruce Wayne in the Flash movie. After nearly 30 years, Michael Keaton is in talks to return to the role of Batman to appear alongside Ezra Miller in Warner Brothers' upcoming movie, The Flash. TheWrap has learned exclusively. Talks with Keaton are in the very early stages. It is far from a sure thing and can go either way. No details are currently available about how big or small Keaton's role is. That plot will introduce general audiences to the idea of the multiverse, one of the core concepts underpinning DC Comics. So my question to everyone, and I will go to our guest first, is do you think this is really going to happen? Who else do you think might show up besides Michael Keaton's Batman? Because, I mean, anything could go there. And what does this mean in general for the DCEU? And as I said, I'm going to go to our guest, Steve Campbell, first.
So I doubt it happens. I mean, it sounds good, and it theoretically could, but the Flash movie's been in production limbo for a long time. Now, from what I've heard, they're wanting to really push the idea like in the TV show where he goes back in time, tries to save his mom, and then that messes everything up and creates a different universe, and we get the multiverse. That would be awesome, because the DCU really needs to do that. They shine when they have these different types of movies in different types of universes. You can have a Joker movie. You could have, the new Batman movies. You could have Harley Quinn movies, and they can all be in the separate universes because you can do whatever you want at that point. So it'd be nice. And there's also been talk of, I believe, Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne.
Right.
So who knows?
That's the role he played in the Snyderverse.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I said, I would love to see it happen, and I would love to see just pure craziness and allow the multiverse so they can do whatever they want and not be so tied into stuff.
Right.
But I doubt it.
Scott, you're up next.
When you approached, or I saw the notes for this topic, I immediately thought and misread the title. When it said Flash movie, I immediately thought Flashpoint movie. If you guys know, the Flashpoint comic series introduced another parallel universe, another dimension or whatever, where instead of Thomas Wayne and Martha being murdered, it was Bruce Wayne and Martha being murdered. And then that Batman was kind of I don't put up with crap Batman at all. And he would kill people and use whatever it takes.
He's older and he's mad.
Yeah, in the same kind of vein of the Punisher, so he's almost a villain.
Yeah.
And I was really, really excited about this. And then today, before the show, I go read the article, and I'm not now as excited as I was. I agree with Steve 100%. I think the best thing where DC Comics, I think, get Marvel Comics is their multiverse, their Elseworlds, as we grew up on. All that stuff, I think, is what, the DC universe always, from what my understanding, reading back into like Golden Age, Silver Age stuff, always had was this: there's Earth, X, there's Earth A, there's B, there's 1, there's Earth 2, things like that. So I think they should play on this. I think this would be a good way to do it if they can go through with it. And then we can have a Gotham by Gaslight movie. We can have a Red Sun Superman movie. We can have one-off movies where you could probably sign any actor you could. Some of these people will do a superhero role for one movie. They just don't want to be locked into 5. So I don't know. There's potential here. Will it happen? I don't know.
Shawn, what do you think, man?
They've already done it. In the TV series, they did Flashpoint. In that they introduced Ezra Miller as a different universe Flash.
Well, that's good then.
He's already he already took the name from the TV Flash, who said, "I'm Flash," and then Ezra replied with, "That's a good name." And then so it's already done. I don't know why they would say, "Well, this will be the beginning." It's already happened. We've already started it. The WB kicked that snowball down the hill. Now it just needs to build up momentum. As far as Jeffrey Dean Morgan playing an alternate Batman, that's still on the table. There's still talk of that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that gives me hope for Thomas Wayne then.
I've heard it mentioned many, many times.
They could always do both.
Sure.
They're still trying to check all these boxes. They're still trying to leave themselves open to all of these alternatives and allow for multiverses to happen. I think that it's just a matter of time.
Shawn brings up something really interesting about Green Lantern being in it. What do you think about a Ryan Reynolds in a second?
That would be awesome. I mean,
Shawn's,
anytime you get Green Lantern in a movie,
Shawn's mom's calling.
Yes, she is.
I honestly thought I had that turned off.
Tell your mom that we're live on Facebook and that she can see you there and then talk to you later.
That was actually the lawn people, not.
Oh, okay. That's a shame.
All right. Well,
what do you guys think about, for example, having Ryan Reynolds?
I don't think it'll happen.
You don't think so?
There's such a bad taste in everybody's mouth over that Green Lantern movie. If they do bring the Green Lantern in, I honestly believe that it'll be the Green Lantern Corps, and we'll get what is it, John Stewart, I think.
Yeah.
I'd love to see
John Stewart should be in there, honestly.
Absolutely.
He was in cartoons, and most people know the cartoons better than anything else.
All right, I'm calling my audible right now.
Okay.
What is everyone's favorite Green Lantern?
John Stewart.
I do this in deference to Steve, who is a big Green Lantern fan.
Guy Gardner actually was my favorite from the comics just because he was such a butthole and annoyance, but he could be there to be reliable. But I don't really look at him as a Green Lantern. I mean, like, I think of Hal Jordan.
He's a damn interesting character, though.
Yeah.
I think the best Earth Green Lantern is still John Stewart. But
hello to Jeree.
Hello, Jeree.
Are we talking only Earth ones or?
Whatever.
Steve's gonna pick Kilowog.
Steve, let him do his thing.
It's actually not. I love Kilowog, but
please let him do his thing.
Mogo is my favorite.
Mogo.
There was a great story, Alan Moore. I'm not a huge fan of his writing.
That's the Green Lantern Planet.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Alan Moore
That is
I've
an
never
interesting choice.
fan of his stuff, but his backup stories in Green Lantern are some of the greatest stories of Green Lantern, period.
Hello to Ronnie.
Because
Right.
they really expand the mythos of the alien Green Lanterns, which is what I thought was really cool, seeing all these different characters. So the whole story of Mogo was this big hunter, the baddest hunter in all the universe goes looking for this legendary Green Lantern, and he knows it's on this planet, and he's looking and looking, and then he takes the whole story to try to find it. And finally, he puts out this whole map on the table and looks at it, freaks out, and flies away. And then you see, as he's flying away, this band of trees around the planet that's in the shape of a Green Lantern symbol. So that's why Mogo doesn't socialize, was the name of the comic, the story. So
That's pretty cool.
as a kid, when I read that, I was just like,
I read that.
that's just really, really cool.
That's pretty cool. No doubt about it. Shawn, did you go on this question? You did go on this question.
I'm very much a Jon Stewart. Nothing against Hal Jordan. I love Hal Jordan. I love obviously the original story and whatnot, but just Stewart's interaction with the Green Lantern Corps and bringing all of that into the story, I thought was magnificent. I much rather see the Corps than just a solitary Green Lantern.
I would too.
I think the stories would be much richer. I was a big fan of Dark Stars. I would love to see those introduced. Perhaps.
Yeah, they got a whole, kind of universe and stuff that we're really not getting.
Right. And with the success of Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously fans will go see it. So just do it.
Yeah, if you do it right, they'll go see anything. Let's face the facts.
That's the most important thing. I mean, Green Lantern could have been a great movie. It was not.
And nothing against Ryan Reynolds, because I'm a huge fan of Ryan Reynolds. I love his dramatic stuff, probably even more so than his comedy. But I think he's done with that character. I mean, he killed him in his own Deadpool movie, so clearly he's done with it. He doesn't want anything to do with it. If they brought in any Green Lantern, I think it would be Jon Stewart.
So this kind of, in my opinion, ties into the whole idea of the DC universe and the multiverse. In the past, when that Green Lantern movie came out, what they probably should have done was a 3-picture trilogy. Mm-hmm. The first one would have been just Hal Jordan on Earth with the ring, figuring stuff out. And then at the very end, Sinestro comes down and he tells you, you're not alone. There's a whole Corps out there. The second movie would be Sinestro and Hal going through, learning about the Corps, seeing the different people, doing their adventures in space. And at the very end of 2, you realize that Sinestro's not a good guy. And then would be the Corps versus Sinestro and the moralities thereof and all that. Now, nowadays, I don't think that would work. I think DC, with them doing this multiverse, really just need to jump straight in, do a story, and jump out. Don't do these 3-picture trilogies anymore. Don't do these things where all you're doing with the first movie is setting up the other movies. Just accept it that we know these origins, or you give us 5 minutes in the beginning of the film, give us the origin, and let's just go. As you said, Guardians of the Galaxy. No one who knew who any of those people were. Didn't matter. You just have a good story, you jump right in the middle, and you go.
Take the Iron Man approach, where you just put out a good, solid movie that if nothing else
don't
comes
be
out,
thinking
it's
10
still
movies down the road.
Right.
People forget that despite the fact that the Marvel movies are connected,
they didn't start that way.
It did not start that way. It started very much with an Iron Man movie that was on its own. Had some suggestions. There was some stuff out there. They did an Incredible Hulk movie, which was very much on its own. A Thor movie that was on its own.
Let's also not forget that Punisher was out before then, and there's been Spider-Man movies before. So this whole idea of the connected Marvel universe from the beginning of Iron Man, it's true, but they tried movies before and they just didn't work. So then they struck upon the idea of doing good movies, tying them together, and that worked. Then DC messed up when they're like, oh, well, that's what we need to do. We need to start off right from the beginning and do this connected universe, which was not what they needed to do.
John's mentioning Blade. Blade
was another one.
led to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and many other things that we have right now. Actually, Blade was kind of their first Marvel Studios' first stab at this sort of stuff.
Oh, and Ghost Rider. Let's not forget about that.
We have a kind of a subreddit on here where everyone's talking on our comments about the Green Lantern movie. As far as what we've learned about Michael Keaton and the Flash movie, I think that this is their answer. This is the DC answer to their effed up universe, which they have screwed up because of way too much, studio interference at this point. This is their way of justifying canon in whatever they do. So we can have Joaquin Phoenix show up against the Batfleck, or you can have him, show up against, you can put him in anything. You can plug him in anywhere. I also think that they learned how powerful this concept can be from what Shawn mentioned, which was the CW Flashpoint thing. They discovered several things from that. Number one, it allows them to kind of do whatever they want. And that's pretty powerful for them right now, since they have screwed up their universe. Also, they found out that people were very excited to see like Burt Ward show up for a cameo, or some of these other, characters from television or movies, or even, they had the guy who does the animated series voice work show up as one of the older, like he was an evil Batman in this thing. I can't remember his name. Someone help me out. Conroy.
Kevin Conroy.
Kevin Conroy. Thank you. I came up with half of that. I get half credit.
You do.
Finally, I think this is my impression of this is I think it is going to happen, because it's the only way that they can clean up the mess they've made. And I think that it's going to make in the future, I think it's going to make a bigger mess, to be honest with you. But and it's not going to be as satisfying as like the MCU, which did their routine for 10 years and stuck with the same thing. But with that said, it could lead to some fun crossovers and some interesting individual movies, and that could be cool. So anyway, that's kind of my impression of what's going on here and where things are going. Shawn,
can I also add that Robert Wool?
Yes, from Batman,
from the original
Batman.
The Michael Keaton Batman movie,
yes,
also appeared as his character, the reporter,
he did
in Flashback.
He did.
So
yes,
again,
and Ezra Miller was in it. I mean,
they've already set everything up,
and people crapped their pants because Ezra Miller was in there among everyone else. It created a lot of excitement, and
you know what it did?
You better believe that they want that excitement in their films.
It was fun. That's what DC's been missing. They struck the jackpot with the Dark Knight trilogy, and unfortunately, they thought that's how we need to do everything, and it just didn't work. I enjoyed the Superman movies. I actually liked Justice League. Obviously, they could all be better. Snyder is a great director, but you need to give about 30 minutes more of an explanation on some of his stuff, because he expects you to fill in details when you shouldn't have to. But they're not fun. And that's what Marvel had over it, is they allowed them, comedy and goofiness, and didn't take themselves so seriously. As a popcorn movie versus a steak. You can't have steak for every meal. You can have popcorn every day.
No, you can't. You shouldn't.
No,
I think I have.
Shawn is a fan of popcorn.
Aren't we all?
All right. I'm going to move on to our next subject, which is animation aimed at adults. It's the evolution of animation. It can be argued that The Simpsons opened the door for Cartoon Network's Adult Swim, which in turn kicked down the door to let in shows including BoJack Horseman, Archer, and Rick and Morty. U.S. animators are serving up not only raunchy comedy, but also sophisticated storytelling. Outside the U.S., animated features have a long history of telling difficult or adult stories. Most recently, The Swallows of Kabul and Funan, I don't even know those, are two films that tackled horrific events. Animation aimed at adults is on the rise worldwide. So my question to all of you, my questions are, what are some of your favorite recent adult animated works? What do you think? Why do you think they're aiming more stuff at adults, and what's coming in the future? And for that first, I'm going to go to Shawn.
I would argue that The Simpsons opened up the door. I don't believe they did. I believe that it was more, and laugh if you will, I believe that Speed Racer, shows like, was it Gatchaman, Star Blazers, all of that stuff that came out when we were kids, we watched. We didn't watch BoJack Horseman. Of course, it wasn't around. We didn't watch The Simpsons because the Tracy Ullman show hadn't started. But we did watch all of this anime that was very gritty, that was very adult, but it was animation. So we absorbed it like crazy. And now that we are older, we're in positions where we can, get the type of animation that we want to see produced and shown on whatever channels. That's what created the kicking of the door, so to speak. BoJack Horseman. Why does that even exist?
So when people are high, they can watch cartoons.
Oh, dude, come on.
Supposed to get better after the first season. I haven't made it that far.
Anyway, I can honestly say I did not watch Rick and Morty until I believe it was halfway through season 2. Just happened across it, and I laughed uncontrollably. I thought that was the most amazing. Wasn't real crazy about the animation, the characterizations and stuff like that, but the story was so fantastic. I was locked in. Went and bought all of the seasons. I'm all caught up now, and I still say that that's probably one of the greatest science fiction shows, period. Absolutely fantastic and full of raunchy humor and so on. But to get back to the question, I don't think that it's necessarily, how do I want to say this? With us, with people of our age actually reaching this point, this is what we want to see. We want to see something more mature. We just because it's animation, we know based on the anime that we were bombarded with as kids, that not all stories have to be Disney-like. They don't all have to have a song. They don't all have to have these cute, cuddly characters. You can do more mature stories, and people will gobble them up. We are teaching our kids, this is the kind of stuff that this is the storytelling that you want to see. This is the kind of stuff that you want to be entertained by. And I think that's what's got us to this point.
Steve, you're up next.
Okay. Actually, the first adult primetime cartoon would have been Flintstones.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of animation in the 50s that was aimed at adults. Now, it was aimed at the whole family. But Flintstones, if you look at it now, it's very tame. It's very boring. It's way past what we are. But at the time, it had a whole bunch of pop culture cameos. It had parodies inside of it of pop culture at the time. It was working on both levels, adults and kids. Huckleberry Hound was another one. It was very popular with adults and everyone. 70s come around, not as popular for adults. Sure, Simpsons has been around forever. Now, it's a good family show, and it also works well for adults. It's also cheap. I mean, animation, let's not kid ourselves, pretty cheap. It did pretty well. And then, South Park, knocked the door open where it's even cheaper, it's even faster, it's even raunchier. So now it is appealing to more adults. It's a lot different now than it used to be. Back when the Flintstones came out, you had 3 channels. Now, do anybody out there watch the regular channels? Do you watch ABC, CBS, NBC? No. We're just finding stuff when we find it. So there's hundreds of channels out there that need programming. It's a lot easier to fill it with animated stuff than it is live action stuff. And there's a less risk of it. And if it works, great. You keep going. And, I've always loved animation. It appeals to the idea of, it's colorful. You can do a lot more with it. It allows for a whole bunch of weirdness that you can't do in a normal TV show. And that's just more appealing now than it used to be because our tastes have changed and we're open to it. So I think a lot of that just plays into it. You could also say it's the golden age of, primetime dramas because of all the cable channels, the binging, the documentaries. It's a golden age for documentaries because there's so many options out there. Everybody has to fill 24 hours of programming on every channel. And that just leaves a lot of doors open. I love Rick and Morty. Like Shawn said, wasn't a big fan at the beginning. I didn't like the animation, but after I got out, past that, I really do love it. Tuca and Birdie was on Netflix. I enjoyed that. Much more female-oriented, female-centric raunchiness. Found that enjoyable. Heck, people made fun of me because I liked My Little Pony. It was done well.
Yeah, we still do.
I don't blame you.
What do you call those bronies?
Yeah,
Is that a brony?
No, I don't watch it anymore.
But it was a good show.
Absolutely. And it's the same person who did Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, which I loved. So that's why I gave it a chance. So when you have people who have a strong viewpoint, like Adventure Time or, Scott's favorite, man, I can't even think of them.
What?
Rainbow Bright.
No, the
regular show.
Regular show.
Oh, I love the
Where every time you have to do anything,
I love regular show.
You fall into the fight for the universe. Try to make toast, and you're going to go up against the eternal toast champion of Nebula 5.
Dude, that's an amazing show.
It is. And it's just everything out there. Cartoons benefit from a singular vision more than any other TV show does. And that's, I think, where a lot of the appeal comes from.
Scott, you up next, man.
I don't know if I can add to anything. I disagree with Shawn. I think Simpsons started a trend of that being on prime time for, us as kids because we weren't used to seeing that. It bothered our parents, some of our parents who were old school, and it's been around forever. And then, like Steve said, South Park. I mean, golly, you can't get any raunchier than South Park. I mean, it's really hard to do that.
No.
And that show is still around. And I used to say, like,
it makes all the right people mad.
Yeah.
In the mid 90s, I said, like, you can learn so much by watching The Simpsons if adults would just watch this. And I'm saying now South Park is so relevant and
yes.
You get what I'm saying? Like, you should watch it as an adult.
Yeah.
And listen to what they're telling you and how you maybe should act and what you should do in life. It's really a great show. There is a ton of animation. Shawn is right, though. We're all older, so we get to decide what gets made. And, yeah, you can take less chances. I mean, I know Cartoon Network didn't order, 5 seasons or whatever of the regular show. They ordered 6, and then they said, wow, people are watching it. So they created more and more and more and more. I mean, like the cartoon Aqua Teen Hunger Force that's on Adult Swim.
Yep.
It's terrible animation.
Yep.
Sometimes the stories are terrible. And yet when I'm watching it, I can't help sometimes but laugh because like I imagine all these characters as my friends, and it's just goofy fun. It's your mindless fun, and every now and then you need that. I mean, you got Family Guy and all these things too, American Dad. All these shows are. There's a lot of. I would say there's better cartoons today than there is regular TV shows, and I mean that with all sincerity. You're almost never going to get me to watch a live action show, but I'll watch some cartoons with you. So I think it's a lot of those things. I mean, I think Shawn has a lot. What he said is right. A lot of what Steve says is right. And I'm not really adding much to this. They kind of stole my thunder.
So one thing too is, you don't like to watch much of anything. It's hard for you to sit down and watch anything. Not an insult, just a statement of fact.
Right.
Cartoons, 30 minutes long, realistically 22 minutes without the commercials.
I'm in and out.
They're always self-contained too.
Yep.
It's never like a giant overlapping story. It might have that a little bit, but it's not part 10 of 29. You can't just jump into the middle of Game of Thrones and know what's going on.
Well,
So
it's like
a lot easier.
it's like what everybody said with Rick and Morty. Like I knew Dan Harmon was like part of that and stuff, but I couldn't stand the art for season 1 at all.
Absolutely.
And that really threw me off. And it
And the
looked like, and the burping and stuff. But, every show goes through their growing pains. And it is, me and Jennifer was watching some Rick and Morty just weeks ago. And that's the first time she was kind of forced into the situation of watching it. And she's like, this is really good. And we ended up like DVRing the next couple so we could finish watching the series. And there is some like crazy like art, not just art, directing, I guess is what I should say, in those episodes. Things you probably can't do with live action stuff. I mean, it's incredible some of the risks they're allowed to take, and they work. And it's just we are living in a wonderful time. And you have stuff like Love, Death, and Robots.
Oh yes,
I mean, like, it's amazing. Now I know I'm going to sound like the old guy and say that there's a lot of really one of them. There's a lot of I used to love Adult Swim, and now there's so many of these shows with the bad acting and the live action people, and I just don't care for that.
I can read Shawn's mind right now.
He loves those?
No, he hates them with a white hot passion.
I know. It feels like me and my friends are doing a college project, and they're making us watch that, and I don't want to see that. I want to see some fun animation.
Shawn, any comments on the live action Adult Swim?
Isn't there one called like the Dave and Eric show or
Tim and
something?
Eric.
Tim and Eric.
Oh my God! I want to put those dudes in a wood chipper.
Please, for the love of God, don't bring up Tim and Eric. That is an abomination.
If you're out there and you love to smoke pot and watch those shows, they're probably enjoyable. But I don't.
Smoking pot would probably help on those.
But they're not cartoons.
No,
Yes,
they're not cartoons.
they're certainly
I
not.
have the same problem with those as I do, like Sharknado or Sharktopus or any of those bad movies.
They're so bad you can't even watch them.
They're made to be bad. I don't mind a bad movie. It's fun to watch a bad movie if it's bad. But when you actually make stuff to be bad, it's not good. It's just doubly bad.
I got you.
Let me do some shout outs here, guys, for just a second, just to say hi to the people who are talking to us here.
Hi, John.
Jennifer chimed in earlier. Hello to Jennifer. We've talked to Don Sexton.
Rocking
Ken,
Bull was very
I think
adult.
wants to put My Little Pony with Scott earlier. Sean Murphy is talking about how
Kenny.
Ken Chalker talked about how he doesn't like that Kenny gets killed every time. Do you get it? And so Sean Murphy chimed in on that. Jennifer says that she's a fan now. I'm assuming Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Gary says, loved Love, Death, and Robots. It was modern day heavy metal. It certainly was that. And let me also follow up that Amy says that Aqua Teen first appeared on Space Ghost Coast to Coast. There are tons of episodes of that show, and that leads to my thoughts, which is that I think that Shawn is correct in that we grew up. Those of us who really enjoyed animation and adult animation, like particularly anime or stuff from Japan or whatever, and grew up on that stuff and said, man, why don't we have more of that sort of stuff? Well, now we're in control. We're running the show.
Yeah,
And
we're
so
not forced Hanna-Barbera down our throats.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the more that we had an opportunity to run the show, the more opportunities we took to do adult animation and catch up with the rest of the world who was doing adult animation long ago, decades ago. I think that we dipped our toes in the water with MTV's Liquid Television. Mm-hmm. And obviously in the late 90s and the early aughts, we got Adult Swim. And Adult Swim really changed the landscape for a lot of that stuff, allowed for a lot of experimentation and a lot of craziness. And I think that because some of that stuff became popular, that, Hollywood operates on one thing and one thing only, and that is money. And when some of this stuff started getting attention and making money, then suddenly all of the people the people at Disney who didn't believe that you could animate something for adults would fight against that with tooth and nail, just as much as they possibly could. But, the inroads that were made mostly on cable television and, whatever, America and Europe, and all of us growing up and getting a hold of stuff is probably what is giving us all this cool stuff now. And you guys have already mentioned it. Love, Death, and Robots is one of my favorite things. I think it's absolutely incredible. One of the best things, if you haven't checked it out, it's on Netflix. One of the best things that's been produced. We're about to get a second season of that sort of thing. I think that's an excellent example. We talked many, many times about Rick and Morty on here. I think that's the best science fiction on television right now. And there's so much more stuff out there that's just really incredible, including comedy stuff that's also very much aimed at them. And they mentioned BoJack Horseman, but I think that's one of the maybe lesser adult comedy animated series that's out there. But I'm glad that we're finally growing up.
The Clone Wars is probably the best thing to come out of the trilogies. I mean, the prequel trilogies of Star Wars.
I totally agree. I contend that that's the best thing that's been produced for Star Wars since Empire Strikes Back.
I like Rebels better, but that's me.
All right. Well, I've heard Rebels is really good. I haven't seen all of those. Hello to Maxine, who is once again checking in with us very much.
That's Walt's
Thank you very much.
How you doing,
yes,
man?
it is. Thank you. That's awesome. And Gary mentions Aeon Flux, which is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, the Max, Beavis and Butthead.
The Max. I'd forgotten about the Max. Yeah,
the Head.
Murphy likes Clone Wars.
Yeah. And one thing also is, back in the 70s and 80s, it was primarily targeted at kids because, they found a niche. Saturday mornings, kids aren't doing anything, so let the parents sleep in, fill their heads in the programming with kids shows. Yeah. And then eventually that went away. And now kids can just watch anything they want at any time. So I think that there's a lot of it too.
All right, Steve, this is your moment. We're moving on to the next subject, which is Both Down. And for those who do not know, both Steve and Scott have done a podcast for the past however many years. Give me the years, guys.
8.5, coming up on 9.
And so, that's pretty impressive for any podcast for sure. Since you're the guest, I'm going to ask you, and Scott, you're welcome to chime in at any time. But what is Both Down about, and how did it start?
So basically, it's about the game Blood Bowl, which you can see behind me, a whole bunch of Blood Bowl stuff. It's a game that Scott introduced me to when we stopped playing HeroClix, which was another game we were playing. That's how we met. Then, as we were playing, I started listening to a podcast because I was at a job where I did nothing but listen to podcasts because I had nothing else to do. And found some Blood Bowl ones. I'm like, oh, this is cool. So then Scott started listening, and then that got us to go to a tournament in Chicago. That was our first tournament back in 2011 as well. And before then, you guys had been doing the previous shows and stuff for a while. And I think Scott had the idea of we know people with the equipment. Maybe we should do a podcast too. And I was like, okay, I'm all for it. It's something fun to do, but we need a focus instead of just a Blood Bowl podcast that's just kind of out there doing whatever. And we chose to focus our podcast on the fluff of the game, which is the history of it and the universe that surrounds it and what people do with it. So we focused on that. We've been going monthly ever since. And with the recent state of the world, as Scott has been stuck at home, we've actually been doing pretty much weekly for a while now. And it started off as primarily fluff based. Then we started going to tournaments. We talk about the tournaments and about the food we ate at the tournaments and the people we met and this and that. So anymore, it's really just us as Blood Bowl players and friends getting together, chatting about being friends, living, and Blood Bowl.
You want to add anything to that, Scott, as far as the origins of the...
Yeah, I mean, it was just two guys in the in the car going up to Chicago and having a lot of fun, and we decided that, maybe why can't we do this? Like, why can't we talk and discuss our love for the game? It's particularly the universe. I mean, Blood Bowl's kind of set. The best way I can sum it up to, like, somebody out there who's never heard of the game Blood Bowl. Take Lord of the Rings universe where there's all these different races. There's orcs and goblins and humans and elves. And instead of warring over land, they say, get your guys together and I'm going to get my guys together and we're going to play a game. And that game is actually called Blood Bowl. It's not a rookie, rugby type game where, if I hit you really hard, I had to like check your armor. And which means you make a dice roll and I could hurt your guy or he could get killed. So you get to manage these teams. You're the coach. You're actually none of the characters. You play the coach in this role. I call it a sports fantasy role-playing game because I take it very much super importance into naming your team. You can't call it the Oklahoma City Thunder or something like that. You have to take a city from this world and put some story behind it, which is what we call the fluff. And that's what we do. So we kind of like Steve said, we started taking, at the time, the game was not published. It was sold sparsely through Games Workshop. They still had some miniatures on their website and stuff. And so the community basically ran all the tournaments and stuff. So at the time I was like, nobody's talking about these old books and stuff that I've had since junior high, because that's how long I played this game. We just decided to like bring up old articles and old rule sets and stuff like that and talk about them. And then the game was brought back in 2016. So since then, every time there's a new release, we do our own personal review and thoughts, and we give Games Workshop, a big company, like plenty of advice from two gingers in Oklahoma, and they haven't listened yet, really, but that's okay.
But we have interviewed people that have, one of the designers for the game we interviewed. We know that he used to listen as he was designing the game, and we had some impact on that, so that's kind of really neat.
I mean, through the show, there's an artist named Pete Nifton who is like one of my favorite artists of all time. And, this guy did these magical drawings and creation and breathed life into this Blood Bowl universe. And it was during second edition that I fell in love with the game or was introduced to it. But his pictures is what like pulled you in. There is strategy to the game. There's plenty of topics you could talk about strategically, but we really love the backstory. We enjoy playing the game. We do try to win and stuff like that, but man, it's all about like the community and stuff. But Pete Nifton, through the magic of Facebook, because I was kind of late to the game getting on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff.
Yes, you were.
Through the podcast and through the power of the internet, I've connected with Pete Nifton, and I remember being so excited, like when he just accepted my friend request. And then just a couple of years ago, he flew over from England and he was a special guest at one of our tournaments, because we'd love to hold tournaments too. And that's kind of where our love for all this happened too, because we used to both do HeroClick tournaments. And Pete's been in my house. I consider Pete one of my better friends. We talk all the time. He's over in England. He might be watching now, and I hope I can get him on as a guest on the show one day. But I mean, it's amazing. I always tell Steve, like, you set to do something, you do it, and you don't really know if anybody's listening, right? You don't get much, you know how these things go. You never get feedback.
Yep.
Nobody will tell you if they like a background or not, or they won't tell you if they're listening. But man, if something kind of bad happens, you know who your friends are, because two things really stick out. And Steve can correct me if I'm wrong. With the podcast, we show up to, I don't know, maybe the third year of Chaos Cup. We show up and we meet these gentlemen from Sweden who flew over, and immediately they wanted to go take a picture with us. And we were both like, what? Like, how do we have this like status among these people? So to make a long story short, they took these pictures of themselves with us, and then they were bragging to their friends. We got to meet the Boat Down guys. And that dawned on me, like, holy crap, we're almost everywhere in this world, you know, like anybody can listen to us at any time. And then the other thing that happened when the big tornadoes rolled through, what year was that, Steve? Was that 2011? 12 or 13? I can't remember anymore.
We've had a lot of tornadoes.
Well, where we had the ones that ripped through more. I think that was 13.
It's 13. It's 2013.
You know, that came, people knew from listening to the podcast.
I was in that tornado.
Yeah. They knew that we were close to that area, and it wasn't long after those tornadoes hit us. And I'm talking within 30 minutes, people was hitting me up on Facebook. Are you guys okay? What's going on? And I'm talking not just people up in Wyoming, which there was a guy doing that. People from all over the world were talking to us, and they cared about us. And that made me be like, man, no matter if we don't get feedback or not, we are important to some people. To some people, we are the people who talk to them like we're in their living room on the way to work.
And we have legitimately received emails from people who, like, you know, I was in the hospital for 6 months, and you guys were one of the things that kept me motivated to live. Or they were having suicidal thoughts, and we were talking about mental health one time, and they reached out to somebody. The fact that we just do this thing and it can actually impact other people's lives is mind-blowing.
We have a guy from Australia that he's friends with me on Facebook. He listens to the podcast. He hasn't played the game for years, but he listens every time because he wants to hear us. And I told Steve right from the get-go, I said, Steve's really big on let's stay focused. Let's talk about Blood Bowl. That's what people are tuning in for. And I'm fine with that. But I also am like, I want it to feel like you sit down in the living room with me and we catch up. And we've always tried to be ourselves. So we've done this podcast.
After about 2 episodes in, because the first couple episodes we were to both down. I'm Steve, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, we can't do that anymore. That's not
right. It. So we've always tried to just be ourselves and make it feel like we're all just sitting in our living room and we're catching up and we're talking about the good times, the bad times. People reached out, for the tornado. They've lived life through me as, I tell stories about my children, or when Steve buys a new home, or when I go through a divorce. They know all this stuff about us because we're just up there with them. And I think we have a lot of people who listen just because we're that comforting voice. And it's a pretty cool feeling to be like a kind of big fish in the small pond of the Blood Bowl community and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty awesome. And until one of us dies, I'm sure we're always going to do this. So, and then Steve will take over and keep doing it by himself or something. So.
How many episodes do you guys have of the podcast at this time?
Regular episodes, 109. And I bet you there's 25 or so what we call special episodes.
That's pretty impressive, guys.
Yeah.
So, and you say
episode 0.
You say about 8 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up on
coming up on 9.
So here's my question, you guys. What's your advice to someone who wants to start a podcast?
Number one, I think Steve was right. Getting we just can't talk about anything Blood Bowl. What can we do? we did. Luckily, there's so many new Blood Bowl podcasts out there, which is great.
Find a niche.
Yeah.
Yes. A niche inside of the niche.
Yeah. And, we did that, and we really do still try to stick with that, but we also have kind of bled in like new product. We love running tournaments. I mean, we had one of the, 60-something people, which was a one-day record for people in the United States on a one-day tournament.
It was the world at the time.
Yeah. So we've, we work hard and do what we, we get to promote our tournaments. We get to talk to people. We meet so many people, and we've had everybody, or not. What was it, Steve? Every continent has listened to us, even.
Yeah. We had a person who downloaded an episode who was going on a not scouting, but some type of vessel up to the North Pole or Antarctica. Sorry. So they were actually going through the Arctic and listening to the podcast. So we have been heard on all 7 continents to an extent, We'll
Murphy is confused. He needs to catch up.
Okay, Murphy. Way back when I was married, then I wasn't married, and that's pretty much it. Steve bought a house. Oh, Steve used to be my roommate just for a little bit, and
5 years.
5 little bit of years. And so, we've just been through a lot together.
So if you are wanting to start a podcast, like we're saying, you have a focus. I actually started another podcast with another friend of ours called the World Cup Report. As it sounds like, it's a report about the World Cup. I went to the World Cup of Blood Bowl in Austria last year. And for over a year, we basically did a podcast talking about that one tournament. It was short, talking about what we were doing, what the people were taking, what the rules were, the location, and all that type of stuff. But just do it and put it out.
How many people went to the World Cup, Steve? They need to know a number.
About 1,500 altogether.
1,500 gamers to play a tabletop game.
Yeah.
So that
from all around the world. Pretty crazy.
Right.
Yeah, it was amazing. But, I mean, like I said, it's just one of those things. Like, if you actually want to do a podcast, and obviously everybody now is doing a podcast, it takes nothing to do. You get Audacity. It's a free editor. And then you go to Podbean or somewhere to upload the episode. That's pretty much it. It's easy. You just got to find a reason to do it. And if you really want to do
everyone can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can literally do it on your phone. If you have a decent smartphone, you can record episodes on your phone and upload it, there are plenty of places you can upload stuff for free. And I mean, there's a lot of services out there that you can do editing and all kinds of stuff. Literally anyone can do it. But what you guys are talking about, finding a niche, that's the key right there.
Well, that helps.
Yeah. One thing, Scott was wanting to do a board game podcast for the longest time. I was like, okay, but what differentiates us from every other board game podcast that's out there? There's Hey, Shawn.
Thanks, Shawn. That's one of our biggest fans. We could
from Australia.
We could I don't know. I could make a little snowman out of my boogers, and we could stamp both down on it, and Shawn might buy it. And I know Shawn Wilson is going, Scott, but see,
we're killing Shawn.
I know, and I would have said something
There's
more
a lot of Shawns here.
vulgar on our podcast, but seriously, Shawn supports us.
Yeah.
We do a lot of swag with custom dice and stuff, and Steve makes even crazier stuff because he's Mr. Moneybags, and Shawn is always there to support us.
But yeah, anyways, so gaming podcast, there's so many out there, and you can do it if you just want to have fun. But if you actually want to do something unique, you got to find out what makes you unique. And then
thanks for chiming in, Shawn.
Can really focus your attention on something.
Doing it consistently. Now we
aim.
We usually aim at a certain date of the month, but we're not so consistent because we have lives and stuff. But we have put out an episode every month, and that is saying a lot because there's a lot of.
It's a long time to have that schedule.
I can only talk from my experience in other Blood Bowl podcasts, and people start off, they do 3, maybe they'll do every other week, and then all of a sudden, life catches up to them, and then they start slowing down. And you want to be somewhat consistent if you can. And I know sometimes it's hard because you don't get paid for this. You're doing it because you love it. And that's the thing. You need to kind of love what you're doing. And just
your
keep
interest in it
consistent.
it is also going to wane.
Yeah,
You
there's
enjoy doing it for a while. There's going to be some times you don't want to do it. You still have to just put up and go do it.
I mean, I remember when we found out 100 people were downloading the episode, I told Steve, this number could go up, but I'm more than satisfied knowing 100 people a month listen to us. And, you know, it's grown since then, you know, luckily and everything, but it's pretty amazing. And sometimes I'm very humbled knowing that I've met so many great people throughout the entire world. The guys from Sweden, Norway, England, all these places because of a dumb fantasy football game podcast.
How can people find Both Down, folks?
Facebook. Or
you
just
go
go
to
to bothdown.com.
Bothdown.com. We're on iTunes.
Look at that.
Look at that.
We're on iTunes. What's some of the other podcasting places that know?
Spotify. I don't know.
There you go.
It's just a basic podcast, so nothing's fancy.
And, you know, some episodes, I'm going to warn people, some episodes we're both grumpy, or usually me, and we cuss. And then you could go 10 episodes without a cuss word in it. So, like, most of the episodes are family friendly, and sometimes we go off on tangents.
And we did receive one negative email saying, you know, I can't believe you guys are cussing. You know, I want my kids to listen to it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know what? Sorry, don't listen. I mean, we're going to be who we are. It doesn't make any sense to put on fake airs and try to be something we're not. We tried that. We don't like it.
Well, that's true. But we also have learned to listen to some feedback. I mean, like, most people get really butthurt hearing bad feedback. And we did, or I did too. When you first read it, you're like, well, that's crap. But then once you think about it, you're like, okay, maybe they're not wrong. Let's try a different direction. You know, don't be so proud and stuck in your ways.
Yeah.
So.
If you start consistently hearing the same thing over and over again, you got to take a look at, you know, what people are saying.
Right.
Jim Lane says that your analogy there would be a booger man.
I guess he's all right, we're gonna make some booger men both down.
Wasn't that a Nintendo 64 game?
Yeah, I think there was.
Man?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking that up.
I got to get this out because it's about me. Ronnie says, I listened to this production just to hear the sweet, sultry, sexy, raspy tones of Mr. Dirk Cooper's voice.
Oh,
That's because he smokes a lot. He wants to get
his book narration voices are wonderful. Yeah, I'm a big smoker, dude.
You sound like Faith from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I can't remember what her actress's name is.
Carpenters.
Who?
Sarah Carpenter? No,
the other girl.
Thank you,
Dushka. Eliza Dushku. She had that raspy voice.
Okay.
I kind of like Eliza Dushku. She was
Booger,
great in Dollhouse.
Booger Man was a Super Nintendo game and a Sega Genesis game.
Hey, look at that. You're right on it, man.
I guess it was also on the Wii. Oh, there you go.
Very good. All right. Our next subject, guys, unless you have anything else you want to say.
No, we could talk about ourselves forever. We're really bad when we're in
have
tandem.
a podcast. So
Absolutely. All right. Our next question is just a straight up question from Quora. It is, what is a Marvel character you like in the movies more than the comics? And for this, first, I'm going to go to Shawn.
Captain America. I was never a fan of the Captain America comic. Nothing against it. I never got into it. But Chris Evans really, for lack of a better term, brought that character to life for me. And yeah, I'm digging the heck out of that.
Let's go, man. Is that it?
Well, I'm sure there's 100,000 others, but that's the
okay. All right, really that's cool, man. Steve, I'm going to you.
I would have to say Ant-Man. I didn't read
That's interesting.
that version of Ant-Man, so maybe it is similar to what the comic was, but I never would have thought I'd actually want to see an Ant-Man movie. And it's much better than I thought.
Jim says it's sacrilege to not like Captain America. Scott, who's your guy or girl? Person, place, or thing.
I'm going to say Bruce Banner, because I don't ever really want to read a Hulk comic, and that's what kind of I was judging this on, like, what would you read and pick up, and for years I don't pick up Hulk just on a whim, and I will do that with other characters and stuff. The second one might be Drax the Destroyer. I know he's a minor character. He's just a dude, kind of a muscle dude in the comics, but surprisingly, as much as I don't care for Dave Bautista as a person, he does a really good job, and he brought something to. I don't know if
he's a pretty good actor.
Yeah, he did a really good job, and he made that character really likable and fun. And I don't know if that was his idea or the director, but either way, it works. And so I'm saying Drax or Bruce Banner.
Yeah, cool.
That leaves you, Dirk.
That's me. Anyone who's watching, do you have someone to add to this while I'm talking? It won't be long. My pick is exactly the same as Shawn's. I wrote an answer to this on Quora a day or two ago, and it's Captain America. When I was growing up in the 70s and early 80s, I hated Captain America's outfit. I didn't like the fact that he was a big fat Boy Scout. He was not. There was no nuance to Captain America whatsoever. He was just a big patriot dude that followed orders and went along and rah America and all that sort of stuff. It was the most boring character I could possibly imagine. I really detested Captain America and kind of hated the fact that he was inserted into every damn thing. I mean, this is the 70s and early 80s. I realized that since then that they have nuanced that character and done a little bit more with him than he did back then. And I also realized that Captain America is a character that goes back way further than the 70s and 80s. I mean, he went back to probably the 50s, I'm going to say.
43.
40s.
Okay, well, there you go.
He punched out Hitler.
And I totally understand the origins of Captain America, and especially if he went back to the 40s, what his purpose was and all that sort of stuff. But it didn't make for a very interesting character in my mind.
There were some good stories back then. But
meanwhile, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the first movie, you had, I think that besides the Iron Man movie, the first Captain America movie was very satisfying. Even though they played it pretty straight, he was pretty much that character from the 70s and 80s comics. I felt like he was done a little bit better in the movies. And then, once you get to Winter Soldier, they fixed his dumb outfit, and it started looking cool to me. And they also, made him into they brought focus to that character that I felt like he didn't have when I was a kid, and roughed up his edges a little bit. He, instead of being a yes man for the government, he started questioning the government and was more of kind of a cowboy, which I think is much more what Captain America should be than just someone who, does everything by the book or whatever. And, by the spoiler alert, by the time that you get to Infinity War, I was 100% on board with Captain America and really felt strongly when he went up against Thanos, because he was hopelessly outmatched there. But there he was doing everything he could, despite the fact that there's no way that he could possibly defeat Thanos. Fighting against bullies and stuff, that was a kind of a super bittersweet moment that the Russos set up. And then finally, the character arc, again, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Endgame, tune out now, where he gets a hold of Mjolnir and beats the living tar out of Thanos. There is no one that screamed louder than me in that theater. And then finally, the character arc that completed with that character, I went from frankly detesting Captain America to being one of the biggest Captain America fans out there. And so that's my evolution on that character. And that's the character that went, that's better, I think, in the MCU than in the comics.
I would say you could almost say Loki The actor that brought, I hate Loki, reading Loki in the comics. So,
Everybody hates Loki.
Yeah. And, he's a fun character in the Marvel universe.
Spider-Man. I never liked Spider-Man.
Really?
That's a
because
good one,
he's always
too.
whiny and annoying. And in the movies, he's actually done really well.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them, actually.
I mean, Miles Morales. I mean, Spider-Verse is the best. Spider-Verse is just the best superhero movie, period.
Yeah, it's one of the top, if not the top Marvel movie for sure.
So good.
Jerry mentions Thor, and that would be probably my second choice there. I was never a big fan of Thor in the comics either, and became a huge fan of Thor because of the MCU. I'll take Fat Thor any day.
We can't get into that. It'll take too long.
Yeah.
I believe my mother.
Jim is disowning us.
I believe my mother.
No, he's disowning you because you don't like Captain America.
Well, Shawn didn't either.
And Shawn, you both. You both are terrible.
Ronnie thought that was funny. Jerry thinks this is funny as well. Jim says that Captain America rules. He's a big fan.
I vividly remember whenever we were watching the first Captain America movie, and whenever he did his first bout against the Red Skull and his minions, Jim literally leaned forward in his chair, looked at me dead in the face, and said, "That's Captain America." So I'm right there with you. I think that was there was definitely that moment that I said, "Wow."
So since Jim's not here, I will back up his position. The issues that you have with Captain America, and you like him being a cowboy and off on his own and questioning the authority, that is all going on in the 80s and 70s. It was a huge storyline where he stood up for himself, and he was actually replaced as Captain America and became Nomad, and they put in a racist guy.
I wasn't reading those comics. What I was reading is usually the stuff that was in the Avengers. That was kind of my
crossover stuff.
That was kind of my That's he would appear in the other stuff, and he just didn't appeal to me.
Yeah, because it's
and
all.
It probably started with that outfit, guys. That outfit is garish and terrible.
Oh, get out of here! Get out of Shut your face. Next subject.
But yeah, I can understand that, but I hated what they did with him in the movie, though. At the very end, where he went back in time, that just went completely against everything.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Hey, if you haven't seen it now, then I don't know what to tell you. Amy says Chris Pratt owns Star-Lord, and Scarlett Joe sold me on Black Widow. She's a badass. Star-Lord is a character that I loved back in the 80s. I collected many Star-Lord comics, so that was definitely a character that I loved in the comics, and even more in the MCU probably. And yeah, Scarlett Johansson is awesome as Black Widow, and we're going to get to see her in a movie finally.
No,
I was never a huge Scarlett Johansson fan. Now, granted, what
is wrong with you?
She was just an average plain character, much like a lot of actors and actresses in Hollywood. She didn't do anything that really impressed me. Oh, what was it? Eight-Legged Freaks? No, I'm sorry, that didn't impress me.
Ghost World. Lost in Translation.
Lost in Translation. I was more captivated by Bill Murray than I was by her.
I get that. That's the point.
But it honestly, when I first saw that she was going to be in this as Black Widow, I was a little disappointed because there was a different actress. Emily Blunt was originally supposed to be Black Widow, and I was so excited about that. So whenever she didn't get to play that character, I don't remember what the deal was. I think there was a scheduling conflict or something. Whenever she didn't get to play that role, I was, now I'm taking, the second best, and I'm just kind of, all right, fine. But she did take that part, and she did make it her own. I do wish she would have had a little bit more of a Russian accent throughout the movies, but
she's a spy, man. She can dump that accent if she wanted.
That's all well and fine, but it just I wish there would have been a little bit more to it. Hi, Mom.
Hello to Shawn's mom.
I agree.
On what?
See that
she is Russian, but
Gigi.
Gigi says ScarJo is luscious. Blasphemy, Mr. Wilson.
I didn't say I didn't find her attractive. I just never found her to be that character. There were
And
plenty of
Murphy
other
likes Emily Blunt.
See,
I would
there were a
like
lot
to
of other
see
characters
She's
that
a nobody.
right. I do. Why can't you go? There's plenty of actual Russian action actresses that you could easily have pulled into this. You did not need a named character for Black Widow. Granted, having a named character, well, it bumps up your budget.
Yeah.
She's not in a bunch of scenes that really focused on her, and that's not her fault. That's just the way the story's worked out. So get somebody that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. Get somebody that perhaps is Ukrainian, is Russian, is Czechoslovakian. You know, somebody that can really pull that East European, vibe out of her, and find somebody that's athletic that can do all of this stuff and not depend so much on stunt work. Plus, why did you get rid of that perm? That perm was hot. I was so disappointed when I got rid of that.
Yeah, the curly hair was better. I agree.
She had different hairstyle in every movie, I think.
Possibly, but man, those curls.
Those were delicious.
I'm breaking my rule and putting another subject on here because I don't even have to reply to it, but I really want to hear from both Scott and Shawn, because I've heard from Shawn in the past on this subject, and Scott had a rant about this, I think, yesterday. So let me just set you both up. In a survey commissioned by the Sunday Times, artists top a list that also featured telemarketers, social media manager, PR specialists, business consultants, and human resource managers. 71% of those asked believe that artists were the most non-essential of jobs during the pandemic that cannot be named, with the results having been collated from approximately 1,000 participants who were aged 16 and over. So my deal is, first, Scott talked a little bit about how artists in general are not appreciated, and so I'm just going to go to you, Scott.
What Dirk is referencing is, as of late, I've been doing some small commissions on some little cards, and they're taking me anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours to complete little color sketches and drawings. And I take pride in my work and actually find myself, trying not to just shell something out, but actually to do something that's going to make people want it more. The funny thing is talking to somebody, they said, how much do you charge for these? And I'm probably at the time was charging not enough. But I wanted to kind of stick up for myself. Is like, what you don't understand is like the tools that I use, which is markers and, certain type of paper and pencils and lighting, and how I ship these things to you all cost money that I'm not actually charging you for. I'm charging you for my time. And like some of the markers I use, if I need one marker, it's $6. If I want to, if I want to get a 6-pack of these markers, I can get them for $30. And if I can catch them on sale at the right time, I can get those 6 markers like 40% off. So those are tools. Just like I never cared about repairing my own car, which is a mistake, but I don't know how to do that stuff. And the people that know how to do that and that have the tools, our society has no problem with people who work on cars all day. We don't call them car nerds. We respect them and think, oh, this guy's brilliant because he knows how to fix cars. And it is needed to get to work and to go get groceries or go get something. But art can be important too. I don't actually take offense to this survey of saying you're not essential, because to completely survive, I don't make food for you. I don't provide electricity. I don't provide clean water. Now I provide entertainment. I provide escapism, which are still super important things. As the article says, when you're stressed out and you go for a walk, you go slap on your headphones and you listen to an artist tell a story to you or play music to soothe you. I read comics because I love the art. I mean, the stories are good, but if I really was just cared about the stories, I'd read a book. But I want to read comic book art because that's what brings me in. It pulls me in. I think art is super important because it also captures the emotion and the things that we're going through as a society as well. I mean, like, a building's nice, and I respect architects because if I built a building, it would fall down. And it's super important. But they also have educated themselves how to do this. And just because I've taken... Number one, I believe anybody can draw. I truly believe everybody who I talk to goes, oh, man, you're a good artist. You're born with that. And I'm like, I really don't believe that. I buy into the fact that anybody can draw if you're willing to take the time to practice and do it over and over and over and over and hear criticism and maybe listen to the criticism and just do it over and over. And I'm thankful I was born in a time that we didn't have the internet. I know it makes me sound old, but I might get distracted like a lot of my children do. They have a lot of talent, but they're also fighting all the distractions of the internet and having everything handed to them entertainment wise. So it's a real struggle to kind of keep pushing them, but not shoving them into the art direction of art. Luckily, I focused on a lot of art stuff when I was younger. And when I do it now, which I don't do it as often as I should, some of the fruits of that labor from then is showing through. But really, I don't draw enough. I don't do this 12 hours a day. So it is a skill. I think this is what I always tell people. If I'm drawing on something or painting something or creating something for you, whether it's a graphic design project or anything, I believe that my time is worth at least $20 an hour. And so if I draw something small on a little card, after all said and done, I think I deserve, $20 at least an hour for something not a lot of people can do. But also a lot of people can do it. And the bad thing about art is, if you're an architect, to the common man, they like your, you can build a building, you can fix a car or whatever. Art is still subjective. I can show you a portfolio and you just don't like my style. And you could say it sucks. I don't care about it. I don't like Jim Lee, even though he's one of the greatest artists ever, because he's too realistic or whatever it is. You can find a reason to hate art. Practical things like fixing a car, you like your car fixed, and we accept that. I get why they say it's non-essential, but I think art is very important because people don't think, here's a random cup, right? Somebody designed this cup. Graphic designers and artists have created everything you touch in your life. You go, I need to go buy some
Someone designed
pins.
the mold for that styrofoam cup too.
Exactly. You need some ink pens. You go to Walmart. You have all these brands flashing at you, and you decide some way to grab a pair or a couple of pins, and all that fights with you. Shawn Murphy's listening right now, and he's a graphic designer and artist, and I'm sure Shawn's going to add to this all the time.
Right.
What I really hate is when people go, "Oh man, you should draw comics and you should do this for a living."
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, would you like to buy this from me? Oh no, I'm not going to buy that from you.
I don't have the $4.99.
Exactly. I don't have $4.99 for your self-published comic. And
art is free.
Yeah. And that's the big struggle is like, that's where I was kind of mad is people were like, why do you charge so much? And I was like, well, I used 10 different markers on that.
Scott, how much were you charging?
I charge on those things anywhere from $25 to $40 based on my time.
Grossly undercharged.
For sure. And that will change, but I'm also kind of a no-name. But if you're wondering what I'm talking about, go to my Facebook. You can see what I've done, recently. But in some ways, it's a good way to make a little bit of extra money and, show off my talent and practice my talent, because I think that's the hardest thing as an adult. And you guys, Shawn's probably the opposite, but we also different in our lifestyles because I have children and stuff. It's hard to just sit down and draw whatever you want when you have time. I guess I want to be more. I don't know if the right word's efficient with my time. You know, I want to produce something. Whereas when, 25 years ago, I would just sit down and work on my own little characters or stuff like that, if that makes sense. And I'll stop talking.
Before we go on, let me say a lot of people are putting comments in, and I didn't want to. I mean, Scott was really laying it out there in a beautiful way.
Okay.
Really, and I didn't want to interrupt while you were saying it because you were saying it so well. People keep the comments coming, and I'm gonna let Shawn talk and give him the same space, and then we'll take your comments. So please keep them coming. I'll put them up there in just a moment. Shawn, do you want to take the floor on this subject?
How much time do we have?
Well,
It's like 2 minutes.
How many curse words do you want?
I think this is an important topic. So say what you need to say, buddy.
When I saw this question, I almost flew into a rage, and the reason being is I've been doing this professionally, both illustration and graphic design professionally, meaning I get paid to do this.
Yeah, this is your living.
It pays my house bill. It pays my electric, my gas, my water. I've been doing this for nearly 30 years professionally. Now, I've been illustrating pretty much since I could hold a pencil. Mom once said that she thought that I came out of the womb with a pencil in one hand and a crayon in the other. I've always illustrated. Above my table at work, there is a cartoon that says it's got an individual, an artist, presenting a logo to a client. The client says, "Why are you charging me so much? You only spent 5 minutes to create this logo." And the next frame, the artist replies, "I spent 10 years learning how to do this in 5 minutes."
Mm-hmm.
Now, that kind of goes to illustrate exactly what it takes for me personally to do what I do. My boss will always come in and say, "How hard is it to create this graphic?" And my answer is always the same. It's not hard at all. It just takes time. I can create anything you want graphically. I can illustrate anything you want. Give me pencil and paper. You just have to give me time. My ability is the amount of education that I've given myself. I read the books. No one taught me how to draw. I found the books. I read the books. I studied the techniques of many different artists. Like Scott said, I grew up in a time where there wasn't an internet, so I couldn't just look this stuff up. I had to go to the library. I had to go to the bookstores. I had to purchase my own library to teach myself, because there wasn't a class. There wasn't a professional online showing you how to do this stuff. I had to learn through just hard work, determination, and focus. Literally, that's all I had. I had great parents right behind me saying, "You do whatever you want to do. You can create whatever you want to create. Go for it. If that's what you want to do, if that's the direction you want to go, and go for it." And it was that support that really, helped me on my path. Now, as far as being non-essential, I literally went into a rage because, like Scott laid out, there's nothing non-essential about what what Scott, what Dirk do as a visual artist. Scott mentioned everything you see, everything, doesn't matter. Stop sign, graphic artist was behind that. Your favorite banner over your favorite eatery, graphic artist did that. An etching on a glass, graphic artist did that. The interface on your phone, graphic artist. The icons on that interface, graphic artist. There's nothing that you look at, that you see in the world, that a graphic artist did not have their hand on. And it took that person not hours to create that. Scott, you say that illustration took you an hour to illustrate. No, it didn't. It took you 30 years to create that illustration. It took you countless successes and setbacks to get to the point where you can envision and relay on that piece of paper what you had in your mind for somebody else to be able to see. For years, schools, high schools, elementary schools, they all seem to want to remove art from the school. That's one of the first things that, whenever there's a budget cut, it always seems like art is one of the first things that get cut, because nobody looks at art and says that's essential.
And music.
And
shout out to music.
All of the arts, dance,
writing,
all of these things are they push it off because, as you stated, that's not going to put food on my table. That's not going to feed my kids. That's not going to get the plumbing working. That's not going to turn the lights on when there's a power outage. Obviously there are more physical, for lack of a better word, more tangent careers out there that people do look at as a necessity over art. But what they don't realize is, without that music, without that puzzle laid out before them, without the funnies in the Sunday paper, life is bland. Life is dull. Life is empty. You can't survive without some form of art in your life. Not just, as I said before, the apps on your phone, but what those apps represent on your phone is what touches an individual. You look back through history, the Greek society, artists were held above statesmen. Artists were held above the military, the leaders. Why? Because they inspired people, because they touched on people emotionally. You look at the sculptures, you look at the paintings of those times, and the artists that touched that did far greater things. You look at I believe it was Michelangelo, who not only did beautiful paintings, but wonderful sculptures, and they brought forward that sense, that emotion that people couldn't just feel. They needed something to draw that out of them, and that's what artists do, is they draw that emotion to the forefront and allow you to feel when nothing else will. One of the biggest problems I've ever had is whenever people talk about artists, they just draw stuff. It's not worth anything or what have you. One of the statistics that I like to tell them is you feel happy whenever you look at this particular TV program or this piece of art or listening to this bit of music. But what they don't realize is the turmoil and whatnot that artist may have gone through. I believe artists are number 3 or number 4 as far as occupations that cause suicide, because artists are so emotional, because we wear a lot of our emotions on our sleeve to project that in our creations. And to say that they are non-essential, that just shows the short-sightedness of society today and society 20, 30, 40 years ago. If the world was truly fair, I would dare say that the artists would be paid like NBA players,
yeah,
NFL players.
Some of them are.
Some of them are, and those people also paint a big red dot on a canvas, and
No, not even that. Actors, directors, writers, that's all art, and there's different ways.
Absolutely.
You get paid by unfortunately the system of how money is made. If you make people money, you get money. If you sit at home and create the world's greatest book ever written and you don't show it to anybody, nothing comes of it. So that's just how life is, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
The one thing I want to touch on is the word talent. I've been doing this I've been doing art since I was 4 or 5 years old. I thought I was being serious at the time. I seriously tried art when I was 4 or 5 years old. And, over the years, people go, "Oh, you're so talented." And, I always take that for, someone's being very nice. They're being kind to you by saying that you're talented. But I didn't just pick up a pencil and suddenly draw like Michelangelo. That didn't happen. I still don't draw like Michelangelo. As good as I am, say what you will. The place that I'm at right now came to me through hard work. And much like Scott, I believe that anyone on this planet can draw. If you have if you can hold a pencil and you can see things, then you can draw. So it's a skill. It's something that can be taught to you. Now, there are varying degrees of creativity, and there are varying degrees of focus, because learning to do this takes a lot of alone time. You got to spend the time on the artboard, and it also takes a lot of observation. You have to look at stuff, and you have to be patient. And you have to want it. You have to really, really want it, because it's not something that's going to happen quickly or overnight. And you also have to, there's another element that every good artist has, and that is the ability to be critical without crippling yourself. So you can look at whatever it is that you're doing, and believe me, everything that I do, I'm upset with. I'm never really happy with whatever it is. But I can say, look, if I just did this a little different and I did that a little different, then the next time it'll be a little bit better, and it won't make me as mad as this silly thing that I've just created. And if you are an artist who cannot do that evaluation, you will never grow. And if you're an artist who beats yourself up too much, then you will stop creating the art. So you have to be able to be self-critical, and you have to be able to give yourself a break a little bit and realize that the next thing that you do is going to be a little bit better than the last thing you did, if you use that critical evaluation, or you hear critical evaluation from other people. And by the way, it probably shouldn't be from friends and family, because unless your friends and family happen to be Scott and Shawn, who know what they're talking about. But it should be from people who are artists or who are teachers and can give you some critical evaluation. But ultimately, you have to be your greatest critic. If you're not your greatest critic, you're going to stop evolving as an artist. So I think those are the attributes of a good artist, and it's not talent. folks. It's skill,
No.
and it's something that you grow with over time, and you have to work your ass off to make it happen. And so while I do always appreciate where it comes from when people say, "Oh, you're so talented," realize that what you're calling talent is a skill that has been created. It's been forged over many decades of sitting in front of an art pad or a tablet and creating that thing. And frankly, it is something that is valuable because, frankly, look at the scoreboard. You can't do it.
Dirk, I was going to add. Dirk, what I was going to say is before you said it. Yeah, almost everything we draw as an artist, somebody will come up and go, "Oh, that's amazing!" And in your brain, you're going, "Thank God they didn't notice this. They didn't notice the fingers on this. They didn't notice this. They don't see all my lines where maybe I erased, and luckily I drew light enough." We talked about Pete Nifton, the friend of ours, me and Steve. I can't remember his exact quote, but he said something to the effect of, as an artist, it's when to walk away from a piece, because in his mind, something to the effects of
when do
a
you
piece
stop?
is a piece.
You have to know when to walk away.
Yeah,
True.
it's never done. You just have to know when to walk away. Is what Pete's
done
always
enough.
said.
Yeah, he's so right.
And you know, I told Jennifer today as I was boxing up this artwork to ship out, I was like, man, I really, really actually like these pieces. I kind of want to keep them. And then I thought to myself, that's good, because that means I gave that artwork everything I could give.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something I want to keep, that means it's really great that it's going out the door, because that's only going to help me get better. It's going to give the customer exactly what they want, my whole heart and soul. And, just like you said, we don't say a doctor's talented. We say that like he's worked really hard to get where he's at. And that's the same thing. Now, I do believe that people are born with a lot more creativity than others, or maybe they're not born with it. Maybe they've experienced stuff as a child that set them on a different course than somebody else. You're around different support systems, or, I grew up reading comics and my dad never cared for that. And he'll tell it to this day, but he's like, I was just happy you were reading something finally, and
Take it back to Michelangelo. Michelangelo studied under people, but it's not like he studied under thousands of people. He has an innate ability to draw out what he wants. So if I can speak to this as the sole non-artist here, I guess, I can do the podcast. I can do certain things. I like how things go together. So maybe I have an artistic flair. But the whole idea of this non-essential, art obviously is one of the few things that separate us from the animals.
Yep.
Ever since we became human, there's
point.
art on walls. There's handprints, just simple handprints of, this desire to reach out and express stuff. So that's not in question. This poll is one of two things. It's there to get this going so that you go and click on it and give them views and give them exactly what they want. But this is specifically non-essential in the fact of the virus that cannot be named. You each speak of art, and as you speak of art, you're at home pretty much by yourself doing it. You don't need to go into an office and subject yourself and other coworkers to possibility of harm in this time. That's what they mean by non-essential. Now, are there certain artists that
I can accept that
have to go in? Yeah, there are some projects that are absolutely needed, and some people will have to go in, or they can work from home. So therefore, they are essential. That's understood. But of course, you ask a layman, you ask me, is an artist essential during this time? No, of course not. I completely understand your valid points, and I get it. But it's not, as Shawn said, it's not keeping lights on. It's not keeping people fed. Now, in your situation, as someone who has to depend on that income, it's essential to you. But to the average person, is an artist an essential position? Of course they're going to say no. Those 29% that said yes, those are artists.
The only argument that I would have for that is, yes, the article may be referring to this particular moment in time, whether it's essential or not.
Yeah.
The problem is that the idea of artists being essential or not isn't just relegated to this point in time.
Oh no,
Exactly.
You're
That's what has
right.
our hackles up about this subject, is because it
And
happens
I
time and time
completely
again.
Agree
And
with that.
that's the only reason why,
Yeah.
like I said, whenever I saw the title of the question, it was like,
Yeah.
I mean, I get the doctors are the most essential people in this time of, I mean,
Absolutely.
obviously.
But in the great
know.
scheme of things, as I said, this goes back to was it? I want to say Oppenheimer, but I don't think that was. Oh, the P word Christ. Who was that artist?
Damien Hirst.
No.
The
Anyway,
one that had. Oh, okay, yeah.
Christ,
Who was
the crucifix in bodily fluid. Anyways,
that? I can't remember.
Maybe
I'll look that
Anyways.
up.
I got you. Anyone out there want to
all
give
that,
us?
as it came along, the government's always been trying, certain part of the government's always been trying to cut funding to the arts because they see it as non-essential. So I get where you're coming with that. Absolutely, art is essential. You look at schools now and their music programs have been cut. Is music essential? Well, when you look at it, black and white, no. But what it does is it basically is teaching you a language, teaches you to work with people. It gives you a fundamental understanding of how things work together. And, all of you, when you have your art, it allows you to express something through your art. Like you're saying with the suicides. Of course, when you have something that is driving you, whether positive or negative, and you have to get it out, art is how you do it. Whether it's through a drawing, or it's through a book, or a poem, or just beating a drum as hard as you can and putting music behind it. It doesn't matter. As long as you can get it out there, you're not only contributing to your positive health, but the positive health of the universe. None of us could sit here and be happy. Look at us. We're to a degree all surrounded by visual art of something that we enjoy. That brings us joy.
Yeah.
We talk about geek stuff.
Yeah.
That all is joy. And, it's always been that way. Music brings people together. Plays brought people together. We know of plays from 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. All of that. Of course, it's a driving factor of human experience. But it is under quote unquote fire, even though I don't want to say that, by people who don't understand how that works in a society.
Right.
And that is where I can completely understand your valid hate towards this idea of art not being essential. But this is specifically referring to these times.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't so offended by it, but I get it too. The artist you're talking about is Andreas Serrano.
Serrano.
Was it?
Yeah, it's a photograph by American artist, photographer Andreas Serrano depicts a small plastic crucifix submerged in a glass tank of the artist urine.
What was Mapplethorpe then? I thought Mapplethorpe was that.
He does black and white photos of gay people.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess it was
gay men mostly. Gay men BDSM stuff.
Okay, so it was probably the same time.
Which I might know a little about.
They both came under fire at about the same time. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me get to some of the comments. I promised everyone we would do that. So Gigi says, and thanks to Gigi for chiming in through YouTube. Very cool. Can't pay the light bill with exposure bucks. Everyone says, hey, you could get some exposure if you'll do this for me for free.
Right.
I have a few expletives for that.
Of course you do. Ronnie says, it just takes a few minutes. People don't realize the time you spend working on that talent. Skill is worth money. If you don't think so, then just get a guy off the street to wire your house.
Exactly. Well, that's what I was talking about when I was talking about the markers is like, you don't understand. It took me 4 or 5 sketches on this piece of paper over here before I ever went to complete the work on the card. It takes time.
Jim is drawing the line between art and musicians.
I agree very much
by saying that why do you guys charge so much? I mean, I know that stuff's expensive. Amps and mixers and microphones plus the instruments
maintenance on the instruments.
travel, staying places, feeding the band. I mean, not to mention the amount of time that you get together to learn that stuff. No one just picks up a guitar and goes at it. I mean, come on, guys.
An off-color example of this. Trying to think of the best way to phrase this, because it comes from my dad, and Scott knows kind of where that means. But is in the discussion of paying women for certain activities. Like, why would you pay when you can get it for free? And my dad's response was, well, yeah, you can go find food in the dumpster, but sometimes you want to go to a nice restaurant. And
wow,
there's truth.
Right.
So yeah, you can get a free local band, but that's not going to be,
it's not going to be you
awesome
too.
band you want.
Jerry says that artists are essential for our mental health. Shawn's mom says Shawn has been drawing since he could hold a pencil. Shawn Murphy says, yeah, people think it just happens, or you can just use your computer.
The computer is a magic box.
It's not that easy, folks.
It's a great tool, but yeah, it doesn't.
Ken backs you up what you just said. Pay for quality, and it is a skill. Ronnie's laughing at Murphy. Murphy says that his response to that is usually hand them the mouse and ask them to show me what they mean. That usually makes them think. Yeah, it's not as easy. It's not just hit a button, for sure. Even on a computer, I know that there's a stigma about that, but that's definitely not the case. Jerry says one of our graphic artists has been on the essential employee list since the beginning. That's very cool.
That's awesome.
Ronnie says that Wilson's artistic style is nothing short of amazing.
Thank you, sir.
More on Shawn. His mom says, when I would go to PTA meetings, I could always find Shawn's table because he always drew on his work.
It's true. Very true.
Gigi says, rest in peace shop class. That's another one that that's getting cut.
It's art. You can learn, you can either just make a table or you can make a very awesome artistic table.
Yep, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Jim says, all Will said Winston. Winston is the nickname for Wilson because there's so many Shawns and all out of there. There's a whole story there. Let's not get into it. Paul King, also from YouTube, thank you for checking in, says, we live in an age where everyone is consuming content all the time and no one feels obligated to pay for it. Oh, yeah. Thanks for the free YouTube stream. There it is. Yeah, you guys are getting that. Podcast. You're getting that. You're getting that content. You're getting our content right now for free. It's a good point. Betty again says, I sew when people ask me to make something, but they don't want to pay. And sewing is art, and she's been doing it for at least 50 years. Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely along the same lines. Murphy says that pollsters are non-essential. Pandemic, let's not get onto that. Gary says consuming art is essential to my happiness, especially during these stressful times. There it is. I can't consume art without artists.
Amen, brother.
Jerry says artists teach you how to deal with life. Thanks everyone for chiming in. This is awesome. Ronnie says Vincent Van Gogh cut his ear off. I believe he couldn't get people to listen. Oh boy, Ronnie.
It's here all week, folks.
Yeah, he's here all week. Exactly. Gigi says if the Louvre burned down tomorrow, the world would keep spinning, but it's a world we want to live in. Yeah, I mean, that's art plus its history. And Ronnie backs that up. Hey, there's our whole group. Let's get out of this segment and on to something else. Shawn says dice are art, but
that's because me and Steve, every time we do a tournament, we design a new logo every time. So like in my portfolio, how many dice have we designed over the years, Steve?
Way too many.
I mean, every bit of 20 plus different, sets of dice easily, all with a unique logo. So like it does take time.
And, some of that is, there are plenty of tournaments that just do tournament 1, tournament 2, tournament 3.
The same dice, but we want to be unique. So we have an artist in our back pocket, so we use it.
Let's get to some viewer mail.
Yep.
Which starts with esteemed host. Just chiming in on your most recent broadcast, I want to thank you in advance for removing the Seizure Tron 5000 background, as I had to watch in shifts to avoid falling out.
Hello,
we've got a much more reserved background this time. Hopefully everyone is doing okay with this. I also welcome Mr. Steve Campbell, co-creator and host of the Both Down podcast, along with Scott Prime. They combine to form broadcast media's most dashing power couple.
Ooh.
And I salute them for their near-decade run in their joint endeavor.
I'll take it.
Yeah, sure.
Hot take number 1. Comic movies aren't cinema, not because I dedicated any meaningful time thinking about the topic, but owing solely to the fact that I'm a cantankerous jackass.
I can just respond with History of Violence and Road to Perdition.
There you go.
Right, yeah, those are excellent, yes. No, you guys brought up Scorsese. It has been reported he is troubled. He can hardly get anything greenlit outside of gangster genre. So take that for what it's worth regarding last week's discussion. And again, I'm a filmmaking major. I like snooty art films, but maybe you don't get those into the Mediaplex. And the reason why you don't get that in the Mediaplex is because people don't want to spend the $15 to see something that is going to be equally good on their home screen.
And it might not matter for a while.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with putting it on Netflix. I know he wants to be in the theaters, and he will be in art theaters, unquestionably. But nothing wrong with being on Netflix. Your art films are going to be seen by more people on Netflix than probably in your art house movies theaters anyway. Hot take number 2. It occurred to me, this is pump. You rascal.
That obvious, huh?
It occurred to me that a solution to the Ghostbusters franchise dilemma has been right under your noses this whole time. It is my understanding that Dr. Venkman was killed in the most recent film, along with Harold Ramis's, one of my all-time favorites, actual death. It seems like an actual revival with Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson would have its work cut out, though I'm open to the idea. No, gents, I propose the following. Please prepare yourself. A new cast featuring Mrs. Hooper, Mrs. Thompson, and Mrs. Wilson, to adorn the silver screen, donning proton packs and a vengeance for ridding New York of the sinister specters and formidable phantoms that plague the well-being of its citizenry. Who would be the 4th Ghostbuster? Who cares? Those gals are all American needs.
He's such a suck up, man.
He likes the moms.
Play to your audience.
He's got another deal, but there's no way that we can get into it. I'm sorry, buddy. Your friend, this is the second week he's tried to get us on this subject. We just can't do it. Your friend, advocate, and greatest champion, Pump, and he basically also, his PS is he doesn't want to grapple with Casey Jane. He thinks that she's from Delaware. Is that correct? Scott, Delaware?
Maryland, Delaware, somewhere in that area.
Somewhere in that area. Sorry, very sorry. Rather, we can just get some Capriotti's or Wawa, and I can explain how Chim Chim got it right and everyone else is completely wrong. I had to look up Capriotti's and Wawa. Those are restaurants in Delaware.
Gotcha. Look at him doing his research.
Look at that. So we'll see on this. Okay, so let's get to, as quick as possible, what are you reading, watching, or playing right now, folks? And let's go to Scott for this.
Okay.
Scott wanted to do a whole show on just this subject.
Oh.
Okay, so I'm apologizing now to everybody because I always think the show runs too long, and I'm about to make it longer. I have power watched The Mandalorian. Through Disney Plus.
I still have only seen half of it, so don't spoil anything.
Oh, then we can't. Oh my gosh.
Well, you have to finish it and then come back and discuss it.
Okay, then I'm not going to really say anything else besides what I've done.
I will finish it, man, but please don't spoil it for me.
Then I will not say what I get to say about it, and we'll have to bring Steve on as a guest or something because I'd like him to hear what I have to say.
Okay, is Steve a fan or not a fan of The Mandalorian? What's the take here?
I loved it.
I will say I enjoyed it. I don't think it's great, but I think it's good. And I can say without spoiling anything, it really felt like I was watching somebody was role playing Star Wars with their local group, and somebody goes, "Man, this is a really good story. We should just pitch this to Hollywood." And John Favreau or whatever that guy's name, Favreau, he's in the group, and he's role playing like some character in there, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll try to see what some strings I can pull." And it feels to me like somebody's role playing game from like the old West End game Star Wars. So
right,
I have,
is that a bad thing?
No, not necessarily. I did like from the get-go that they didn't tell you what timeline it was set in. You just had to kind of figure it out yourself. They didn't have to over-explain it or mansplain it to you.
Right.
And the fact of it just went. And if you probably never seen Star Wars, you could just enjoy it for what it was. And if you saw Star Wars, you could do a little extra research to find out the setting and some background on characters.
If you're a big Star Wars fan, there are so many little Easter eggs that are just glorious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there are.
Episode he uses the Lancer that he used in this first appearance in the card or
In the animated.
Right during the holiday
Right.
special.
right.
Yep.
It's like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, there was that. I really enjoyed that they brought back a lot of races that were throughout Star Wars that we got to see an Ugnaught and see like him as a main character and stuff. It was amazing. Yeah. Dirk, you have just a couple of weeks to watch the next 4 episodes. Right. And then we're going to talk about it. We're going to spoil it for everybody.
They're not really that long. It's ridiculous that I haven't watched it.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to agree with that. You've had over nearly a year now.
I've had plenty of time. We can conclude this conversation at another time. Matter, we can put a whole segment on it if you want.
Okay. Yeah, I'd kind of like a whole segment because I have good, bad, ugly, and even more to talk about. So
write it down. I'll do my homework, and we can.
The good, bad, the ugly is very much how I feel about it. Mm-hmm. It feels like very much a spaghetti western, right down to Enrico.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Absolutely.
And we can talk about that.
It is unquestionably.
This is definitely like a subject I'd like Steve to be in on. So maybe we have an episode where we have multiple guests for different topics or something like that and bring them in.
I would like to do that. That would be cool.
So that'd be a good experiment. But I would definitely like to go on this tangent with Steve.
Something else for me to screw up.
As for reading, I picked up the volume 1.
Oh, here we go. I'll put it back on you, buddy.
Turtles.
Sorry.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles by suggestion from Joe Roberts.
Yeah. So what do you think?
Is that a new one?
It's the newest series. They're on like issue 100 or whatever. Joe actually suggested if you read one story arc to get volume 3. I just decided to go all the way back to volume 1 since it wasn't that much of a progression. I've really just picked it up like yesterday. So I'm just started reading issue 1 when we were in pre-production for the show tonight, and we all started talking, so I had to set it aside. So I don't have any viewpoint of that, but hopefully by next episode I can tell you more. So
cool. Let me clear out some of these comments here before we go on. Amy says Disney Plus is doing an exclusive viewing of Hamilton on the 3rd.
I know. It's going to be
awesome. They paid a lot of money for that.
And they're getting,
believe me, hundreds of millions of dollars. Gary says, watch Vast Night on Amazon. Screenplay was written by a local guy.
That's cool.
Anyone? Do you guys know about that?
And we're all in Oklahoma, so therefore it's local that way.
Right. Good point, Scott. Thank you. Jeree chimes in and says that she thinks that Casey Jane is from Rhode Island. And I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Pump was a little off on the states there. Murphy says this is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
What does the Ugnaught say? Do as I told.
I have spoken.
I have spoken.
Which I love.
Golly, I'm gonna do that to my kids a lot if I remember that.
Ronnie regularly. If you put a quarter in Ronnie, he will come back with Jingle All the Way. That is kind of a go-to for him. I don't know why he is mentioning it right now. And Shawn says he thought The Mandalorian was really good. I can see your point. Dirk took us through some 80s movies and role playing that was awesome. So reversal. Thanks for shouting out on some role playing that we did on Star Wars. I do miss doing that. That's a lot of fun. All right, who is next? Let's go to Steve on the subject of what are you watching, reading, or playing right now?
Well, I just watched for the first time Avatar: The Last Airbender when it came on Netflix.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been wanting to do that.
Oh, it's really good. So,
Is this the animated or like live action?
No, animated. Oh, I
cool.
watched the live action one too. Don't do that. Don't.
Yeah.
I knew it was bad, but man, it is so bad. But yeah, the animated was really good.
I've heard that time and time again.
Yeah, so I was not disappointed with that. Haven't been reading too much lately. Just started a D&D campaign with the previously mentioned Pump. So that's been going on.
Cool.
And been playing just a ton of Gloomhaven through Tabletop Simulator.
Gloomhaven?
Mm-hmm. It's
Cool.
How would you describe it, Scott? It's a directed RPG board game.
That's
with
what I would call
a
it.
legacy element. So like as you play, other characters get unlocked and you do certain missions or you close off the path to other missions and stuff.
Yeah, you don't need a game master for it. Or dungeon master. You play the game. It's everybody versus the game. It's a very innovative game. It uses no dice, but it still has all the randomness you want through a card deck system. I own it, guys. So like, if anytime y'all want to try to play it, we could.
Of course you do.
But I think it's best played on Tabletop Simulator because there's so many moving pieces on like how the other characters when you do dungeon crawls move and stuff. I played it in one of the campaigns that Steve's involved in on Gloomhaven, and I prefer it actually on Tabletop Simulator over the in-game live scenario.
Yeah, it makes it so much better. And I'm not really sure how to do it. Our buddy Sarge set it up. So if you're interested, you'll just have to figure that out yourself.
But it is a very directed role-playing game, and there's over like 90 missions on this thing, and every character has a goal to retire, and it could be simply I want to get 9 pieces of armor because.
Wow, I think we totally lost him. So let's
retired.
go to Shawn.
Wow, what a tangent.
Yeah. Wow.
As far as playing, I recently went back to the Division 2 to finish that up. He's back.
He's
I'm
back.
sorry. What was the last thing you heard?
So that's okay. Keep going, Shawn.
I went back to the Division 2 to finish up the recent DLC. Finish that in lieu of Season 2's new expansions and whatnot. So, which went live today, I believe. So, really looking forward to that. I enjoy that game. I enjoy that game way more than I should. As far as reading or watching, I watched a movie the other day that I'm going to recommend that no one watch. It's called Killing Gunther. I believe it's on Netflix, I believe. And it stars, or co-stars, I should say, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Gunther. It's an assassin film, comedy. Yeah, put that together. And where everybody is trying to kill Arnold Schwarzenegger, aka Gunther. It's a horrible movie. It's absolutely terrible.
How old is that?
Only a couple of years.
Okay.
It was bad. It was very bad. The visual effects on it were bad. I mean, I think I could do the visual effects on my home computer. It was bad. It was bad. I don't recommend that. As far as reading, I actually have continued to work on Innsmouth from.
Hey, good.
Megan Roberts.
Yes.
Dude, thank you. Thank you, Scott.
A couple of shows ago. It's very interesting. I'm really enjoying it. Again, I haven't been able to get real deep into it, but I'm continuing, and I also went back and started rereading. I know. Are you sitting down? I went back and I started rereading Elf Quest.
Hey, there you
Wow.
And part of the reason was a
go. The
discussion.
Eclipse run or the Marvel run?
The Eclipse run.
Okay.
Old school.
The original. And Wendy and Richard Pini did an amazing thing with those books. I can't recommend that enough. If you've never read those before, if you've never read those very early original works by them, find those books on Amazon, find them for download. I don't, wherever you can find them, get them and read them and absorb them and enjoy. Those books are fantastic. That's all I got.
It's actually a comic book series I've never read.
Oh, you got to read it. It's absolutely fantastic.
ElfQuest, anyone?
I've never read it either.
Oh my God.
I haven't either.
It never appealed to me when I was younger. I probably appreciate it way more now than I would have then.
And you know what? I met those creators many times back at whatever Ocon or SoonerCon or whatever. They were showing, what is it, Richard and Wendy Penny? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who were super awesome. And,
Yes.
I thought they were great people and stuff. I just never, I don't know. It was probably a great story and stuff. It just wasn't kind of my style of art that I was looking for. I was super into Grindel or whatever at the time. And so, or Mage or whatever. I was into Matt Wagner. Okay.
I got the original graphic novel that was produced by Starblaze back in '83.
Starblaze
Graphics. They collected in the original series in 4 volumes, and I got the books way back in '83, and I won't go into the story itself, but through the entire four volumes, you not only get to know these characters and believe them to be real while you're reading them. I mean, you almost envision them as being your friends, your allies, your brothers, your sisters. These characters became real while you're reading them, and then, as with most dramas, there's some deaths, there's some wins, there's some losses, and you feel each and every single one of those while you're going through the whole series. I just found that to be an amazing series. And if Netflix is looking for a property, they need to check on that. They need to get that going, either as an animation. They've got the Dark Crystal, as a Jim Henson co-produced. I don't care. I want to see that as a live action. I want to see that in the theater. I want to see more and more people experience that story of Cutter and the Wolf Riders. Those guys, that whole thing.
Going back to the first subject we talked about the cartoons, or one of the first. That really was one of the first mainstream, not really mainstream, but right below mainstream comics that actually dealt with an ongoing story and characters that had changed and evolved and died and they stayed dead. That wasn't common back in comics. I collected a ton of comics. I knew it existed, but it was one of those things, like, even back then, I couldn't just jump on because there'd be no way to find the old issues.
Right.
I stuck with Green Lantern and all the common stuff just because that's what I did. But yeah, its place in comic history is very big for the fact of it actually did very early, like, bridge the gap between, the counterculture independent comics and what independent comics came to be, which was really the place to go for true, awesome, adult storytelling.
Mm-hmm. See, when I was a kid, a lot of kids grew up on superheroes and those type of comics. Mm-hmm. I was not one of those. The moment, literally the day, I remember I was 11 years old. And the reason I know that is because it was right after my birthday. a friend had given me a G.I. Joe comic book. And I flipped through it and I said, I can do that. Come on now. Anyway, and whenever I presented that to my dad, my mom and dad,
I know it's good.
when I presented that, I wanted to do comics, my dad goes into the back. He brings out a stack of Heavy Metal magazine and says, these are the stories you need to look at. And from that point on, it was either science fiction or fantasy, sometimes horror. That's it. That's all I digested. I never read superheroes. I never got into superheroes. Sure, I had a Batman. I had a Spider-Man comics, had some Defenders, but I never got into them. It was always the fantasy. It was always the science fiction. And yeah, so when I saw ElfQuest, it just blew my mind.
All right, I'm going to give my answer to this before we go on any further. Last week, my lovely lady friend took me to the Oklahoma City Museum of Art for a special exhibit. I'm going to show it right here. It is the special exhibition of pop art, which was exceptionally cool. I've got another thing here that talks about pop art, and the artist that they had in this was Andy Warhol, Robert Indiana, the guy who did the love symbol, right? That right there. Lichtenstein. If you like comics, that guy is all. Let's do it right here. He is all over comics.
I want to ask a question after we're done with this.
All right, Keith Haring. If you remember those characters, there's a lot of cool Keith Haring stuff in that exhibit. Damien Hirst, who was a big surprise. I didn't expect to see Damien Hirst. Where are we at here? He did some stuff right there with those dots and stuff. Very interesting. Most of the stuff almost all of the stuff in there were prints. If you're into printmaking, this was easily the best printmaking show I've ever been to. And my favorite artist of all of these, which was, let's see, can you see that there? Nope. Takahashi Murakami. His stuff was amazing. Oh my God, that stuff was awesome. I would really like to have a book by that guy. He has a couple of pieces that are huge in that exhibit, and they're so weird, and they're so manga inspired, and they're so weird. They are really, really awesome. But anyway, that is a great exhibit if you are in Oklahoma City or you are traveling to Oklahoma City. I don't know how long it'll be. It'll probably be on until later, like maybe in the fall or something, if you can get to Oklahoma City and see that exhibit, or if it's a traveling exhibit. So, maybe you can see that there, but it was really cool. One of the coolest exhibits. And by the way, they also have Dale Chihuly at the Oklahoma City Museum of Art, and he is always awesome as well. So on to our next subject, which finally...
I wanted to ask one question.
Okay, yeah, all right. I'm sorry, go ahead. You're okay.
Lichtenstein, thief or artist? Your guys' opinion.
He's unquestionably appropriating style, and he is also referencing the old style of comics with the
lifted that stuff and then just broke it into 4 colors.
Right. And using that kind of pointillistic color to do his stuff, and then putting his stuff on that.
For what it was.
He is an appropriating artist.
Okay.
He also probably opened up sequential art or comics to the world of fine art. So it's kind of like 50 Shades of Grey. You may hate 50 Shades of Grey, but it introduced that genre to the wider public. And so you have to give some credit.
I can accept that. It's kind of like Elvis appropriating the black songs.
Yes, that's very true. That's my take on it. I
was just curious.
As someone who has a foot in both worlds, I took, I took fine art in college. I took 4 semesters of modern art, so I know it well. And I'm also a comic artist, and I like what they call lowbrow art, which is representational and cool stuff. And that's very much what this exhibit was lowbrow. It's very accessible to the public. So promo time. Let's first go to our guest. Tell us what you want to promote and where to go to see Both Down.
I don't have anything. I mean,
Yeah, you do.
I live a simple life. That's where I am.
There it is, bothdown.com, guys. And there it is on Facebook.
Where's the World Cup report found at?
There you go. Good question.
Facebook World Cup Report, or just Google World Cup Report. I think World Cup Report BB.com.
Right.
Gotcha.
I don't even know. I mean, it's the niche inside of the niche inside of the niche.
Right. If look, maybe you could post that on your Both Down Facebook page and people could follow it on there if they want to.
They're aware of it. So
okay. Shawn, I'm going to you next, buddy.
Nothing really to promote at this time. Obviously, check out rankingstudios.com for any updates on upcoming projects. I'm currently in the middle of doing design work on a personal project, as well as a project with a friend illustrating a story of his. So hopefully whenever I get something that is ready to show, rankingstudios.com and Ranking Studios on Facebook is where you will find that art.
All right, Scott, you're up.
You can find me over at bothdown.com. You can, if you do the Facebook, I'm over at Facebook. I'm actually talking to somebody right now about a commission. So
good.
Good money.
Yeah, get them while you can, because once I start back to real work, I don't know how much extra time I'm going to have, but I'm going to try to make time this time around. Bothdown.com.
Get a double dose of Both Down here, folks.
That's right. Some ginger love.
Does anyone have anything they want to add to this already 2-hour plus episode?
I do, but
which advocated for artists.
We should end it. We should.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you for having me. I had fun. Hopefully, I didn't derail any conversations too much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for being on. Thank you. You're a great guest, and we appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome back anytime, as we always say to all of our guests.
If you ever need a one host, I'm usually available.
Anything else, folks?
Or wrap it up.
All right. Before we go on, I mention that we're looking for guests for Taskforce Geek. If you're interested, please contact me at taskforcegeek@gmail.com. If you have something to promote, even better. I think we've proved that on many occasions. Visit us on the Quora space, Taskforce Geek, and our home is rankingstudios.com. Thanks to everyone for watching this. Go subscribe on YouTube. Please leave a like and share wherever you see this. It makes a huge difference. For Shawn, Scott, and Steve, this is Dirk Cooper saying dream hard.